Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to move on and continue with this week's theme of hard rock, and we're going to look at yet another song that most of us have probably heard. Much like the last 2 days, though, I'm expecting to hear new things as I have better audio now and more mature ears than the last time I've heard this, which was probably somewhere in my teen years. So, let's get into this. We have Black Sabbath's Iron Man. Let's dive into this and see what they're bringing to the table. That bass has some heavy attack to it. I almost thought it was another percussion instrument. Oh, that reminds me of that Alice in Chains line. Yeah, that bass it's very prominent. Yeah, and I love how the bass is leading this section too. Just a hair bit of rushing in there. Nice tom run. It's really interesting when they decide to double up the guitar line and when they don't. And yeah, the subtle tempo change. love the production. Hmm. Yeah, I'm kind of curious if this is it doesn't say remaster, but it does come off of it is a 2009 remaster. According to what's here in the description. Looks like it came out in the 70s. So, um, I did. I began a reaction to this just before making this video, utilizing the official music video rather than this audio source, and the audio quality was just not very good. It was the volume was way low. I actually had to put some gain on the desktop audio source to actually hear it. I maxed out the volume in OBS, I maxed out the volume in YouTube, and it was just so quiet that I had to put gain on it just for it to become at a listenable level for you guys. And for me, I cranked my my volume knob pretty much to 80, I think. It was just super quiet, and then it was also just very tinny and narrow. And after listening to like 10 seconds of it and making sure it wasn't some sort of intro, and I realized, that's just the sound quality of the whole thing. I went and checked this one out because it's the only other official track, the official video for the song. Unbeknownst to me, it is a remaster. So I'm going to make some comments about the production that I think are really interesting, and I don't know how accurate they are to the original studio recording, how this might have been heard in the 70s. But it's really intriguing to me, at least somebody close to Black Sabbath. Yeah, I don't see who produced this who produced this remaster. But either somebody close to Black Sabbath or somebody close to Warner Records redid this in this way. I would assume that it at least has some sort of thumbs up from the band, that this is a version that they would be happy with. So in that perspective, I think it still makes sense to talk about the production of this, because at least to me it's a strong aspect of the song. There's definitely the iconic riff. There's the opening and outro. There's the solo section. There's a lot of elements to this that are, the music that are very iconic parts of the track and worth talking about. And we're definitely going to get to that. But the production to me is interesting. And I think it's worth talking about, even if necessarily this might not have been the way that it was heard in the 70s. And so with that said, I do want to start with the production here. It is what stood out to me second to most. The bass was the most. The the bass, man. Where did that even come from? So we have some really interesting ideas here. The intro has that very wide pan where the two guitar tones start on, well, your right side. This is my left side, but whatever. They start on the right and they are dissonant. They're two notes, not hugely apart, but just enough apart to create some tension. They line back up, and while they're lining up, they're panning over to the left. And it's a very interesting idea, both the way that they have this tuning idea. I don't know if it's a guitar bend and they release the bend to get it back in tune, or if maybe they are using the tuning knobs to do this, but I love the effect. And then pairing that with the panning is just, it is a cool sound, but also we can hear, at least I heard it more so in the second time when they did this in the outro section, that to me it reminds me of was it the heartbeat monitor in hospitals, where it's the little line that goes from, left to right, and then it has the spikes to show activity or whatever it's monitoring, and it's always going from one side to the other, right? So a lot of bands around this era, when we hear the panning, it's usually like a back and forth thing. We get this constant Doppler effect. And here, though, it's always from one side to the other, back to one side to the other. And it reminds me of that. The beginning it sounds like an engine trying to start, right? It kind of also reminds me of a little bit trying to start a lawnmower, right? You get a lot of the noise, the whoa, and then as it slowly dies down, the noise comes together in this iteration of it, so we lose the dissonance, and then it just sort of kind of fades out. And so yeah, it's kind of, to me, it's trying to get the heartbeat of this Iron Man going, this half machine, half man, um, trying to get the machine part up and running, trying to get the heartbeat of this creation going. And it's an excellent idea that comes together both in the music and in the production, not creating music, so to speak, but creating sounds and atmosphere and storytelling through the use of musical instruments. And they just do a phenomenal job both at the beginning and the end, utilizing this idea. I especially like it at the end when it's paired with the bass that's just running those eighth notes or whatever, and then the drums doing the tom runs. It has more of this machinery vibe to it, almost like the machine aspect is overtaking the humanity. Just a really cool use of auditory storytelling. Then we get into the next section though, and here's where the production really stands out to me, and it's instrument placement. I never realized there is primarily just one guitar in here. I'm not sure if that's because I've only heard older masters, older mixes, or if this was specifically created for this one. I don't know. But I did not expect to hear a single right pan guitar and a single left pan bass. And the bass is just given a lot of prominence in the mix. And we're going to talk about the bass in a little bit. There's some things specific to it I want to talk about, but hearing it so prominently up against the guitar, and also with so much space between them, it's not even that they're overlapping at all. We have pretty much a 100% pan right, 100% pan left instrumentation with the drums and vocals pan centered. There's also the iconic Ozzy EQing on his voice, where it's just super wide, more reverb than I think he necessarily needs, but it's created that iconic sound that I honestly can't think of listening to an Ozzy song without. Hearing him do vocals, I expect that wide reverb on him. It's part of the sound, and while, like I said, I don't think it's always a particularly good idea to do, and sometimes I do feel like it's out of place, I can't, hearing his vocals without it feels wrong now. And honestly, production isn't always about doing what's right or about what's normal. What's the standard idea of producing a sound or creating a sound. Sometimes it's just about being iconic, standing out from the crowd. And, while it might be wrong on paper, it ends up being right in practice. And I think that's what's happening here. There is a ton of reverb, but honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. If Ozzy's doing voice or vocals, that's what I expect from him now. I mean, looking at this, 50 years displaced, but that's actually a really good question. What album did this come off of? I wonder how close to the debut this was for Black Sabbath. Was this their opening album? And if so, how did other people um, hear this? Like I said, I'm hearing it as somebody who, I've heard the song before, not anything, not with my current, listening ability or current hardware, but I've heard the song before, but not like people did when it came out. And if this was Black Sabbath's introduction, this was their debut, what does that sound like if you've never heard anything like this before, especially in the vocal work, especially in the rest of the production? Um, so yeah, that's always some context that I'm down to read about in the comments regarding these older releases is uh, for the more seasoned music listeners out there. I don't want to call you all older, but the ones who are around when we check out some of this 60s, 70s, and even 80s music, I'm really interested in what your memories were or your perspectives or your experience first time listening to some of this stuff, or if you were old enough to know about the public perception. Maybe you weren't just a kid, but you were maybe a teenager or something, maybe in your 20s, and you kind of kept a pulse on um, publications, music publications and stuff, how this stuff was received at the time, because I can't have that. I literally have no ability to gain that perspective on my own. So it's really interesting to hear that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, I think that's it on the production, actually. It was just really interesting to hear how every instrument was spaced out. Also, we're going to touch on this a little. I don't really think it's production wise, but it does deal with placement of instruments. But the second guitar that comes in during the solo section was panned on top of the bass on the left side, which was an interesting choice. It definitely needed to be separated from the other guitar because I'm pretty sure they were the same tone. It was more of a like additive embellishing lines. It really wasn't. I mean, it started out as counterpoint, but it slowly descended into just kind of playing a few notes here and there, and then having a lot of rest between ideas. So it needed to be separated a little bit, but I don't know if putting it all the way over there made much sense to me. I think it would have made more sense center panned, but again, all this production talk could just be stuff in the remaster too. So if somebody has a link to a high quality version of the original, I would love to hear that and compare it to, what I just listened to, this 2009 remaster. All right, the next thing that stood out to me though, the bass. I honestly thought this was another percussive instrument when it first came in. Um, there is a very harsh attack on the lower notes, not so much the higher notes. When he gets into the higher runs, it has this nice warmth to it. I don't know. I don't know if he's just really picking the lower notes sharper. It almost sounds like he uses a guitar pick for the lower strings and then finger picking for the higher strings. That's what it sounds like to me based on the attacks. It doesn't sound that doesn't sound very efficient, but if you're wanting to achieve that specific sound of getting these really percussive hits on the lower notes and then more of a legato feel on the higher notes, that would be one way to go about it. He could also just be putting a lot of extra oomph in there, almost like instead of just hitting the string, like actually getting under it and kind of digging up. That'll also give it that extra chunkiness at the beginning of each strike. But there's definitely something going on with the bass that just has these percussive strikes to them. And, at the beginning of the first verse, I pushed the headphone in closer because I wanted to hear this. I heard the bass there, but I also heard this clapping sound, this percussive element. And I couldn't figure out what it was. And even after pushing the headphone to my ear, I still wasn't getting it. It wasn't until another 20 to 30 seconds later, I think it was actually the second verse, when it started to click, and I was like, oh, that's the bass. He's got like some slapping accentuation going on it, or not slap, popping accentuation going on in the lower notes, and it's a really interesting decision to do as a bassist to um, not only play the melody lines, which the bass does. 90%, no, not, we're not going to go with percentages. That's weird because there's only like 3 sections in the song. Whenever the verse comes around and parts of the chorus, the bass is doing exactly what the guitar is doing. Just, an octave lower, 2 octaves lower, or whatever. Which is really impressive because there are some really fast runs in this song that the bass is replicating right along with the guitarist. There's a lot of skill in the bass work. And we can even see this in the sections like the guitar solo, the outro, and parts of the chorus where the bass does its own thing, juxtaposing what the guitar is doing. There's a lot of movement and really interesting melodic flow going on in the bass. And there's a couple of sections where it actually takes the lead. The guitar is doing it's either doing a textural thing or laying down like a chord or something, holding out the. Oh, you know what it is? It's when the guitar is playing these long notes. I think it's in the pre-chorus, maybe it is the chorus, and the bass is just tearing it up against that, right? So the guitar is playing the foundational aspect, the bass is playing the melody. Absolutely love it. The bass just, it picks up so much slack. It does so much work in here. Um, and it's honestly a really great showcase for the bassist, who is Geezer Butler. That is not the name I was expecting, but I don't want to laugh, but Geezer's kind of Geezer Butler. Man, what a combination. I wonder if that's a stage name. Bill Ward on the drums does not sound like a stage name. Roger Barn, well, he's the producer. Tommy Iommi, Tony Iommi, kind of sounds like a stage name based on the last name, but I don't know. Geezer Butler, man. Well, regardless, the dude's got chops, right? I don't care if that's his real name or his stage name. The dude's got chops to back it up. And it actually makes me want to look more into him because the bass work here is phenomenal. I want to see what else he did. Not necessarily just within Black Sabbath, but maybe before or after it as well. Because he, like I said, he's got really great bass work, both melodic lines. He has some really funky bass line walking that he does under the guitar solo, where he's playing these eighth note runs, kind of sticking on a single note for extended periods of time, and doing a kind of jazzy bass line walk underneath the guitar solo. It's really cool, and I love how prominent the bass is. It isn't center panned like in a lot of modern production where it has to compete with especially the bass kick and the lower tom as far as standing out in its specific range. It's given its own section of the sound sphere by itself, aside for the guitar solo where it has to share with another guitar occasionally, and it has volume. It's very audible at any volume level. It is given just as much weight and importance as the electric guitar is in the mix, and I love that, especially given how important it is, at least how I think it's important in the music itself. I'm really happy to see a producer understand that and give it the amount of spotlight that it deserves, based on its importance, what it's bringing to the song. So yeah, everything about the bass though is just phenomenal. I love it. And even the percussive element at the beginning, which I still find a bit odd, I got used to it, and I enjoy it. I think it's an interesting idea. Um, and then I think the last thing I want to talk about here is the guitar solo, because it's really interesting to me. Right, the guitar solo comes in. We get the right pan guitar, the left pan bass, and I don't remember if the second guitar came in immediately or if it came in, a few bars later after we hit the solo section. But I love the three-way counterpoint we have going here. The bass is technically doing more of a walking idea rather than providing a melody, but because it's all eighth notes and because it does have a bit of movement and flow to it, I'm going to include it in this idea. So we have the right pan guitar, which is leading the solo. We have a left pan guitar, which begins as counterpoint and slowly descends into ornamentation. And then we have the bass also providing a third melody line, and they're all going together, and it just sounds really cool. Nobody's stepping on each other's toes. They're all playing fast, so it really isn't more. It isn't about putting different instruments in different rests of other instruments so that there's enough space for everyone. Everybody's given space based on proximity to each other in the sound sphere. So it really is just about ensuring that the notes at any given time, which since everybody's playing eighth notes is every half beat, is not providing too much dissonance, or if it is, that it's quickly resolved in the next half beat or even a full beat, just kind of coloring these lines rather than sticking strictly within the key signature, a very jazzy idea. And then eventually, like I said, the left pan guitar kind of fades out and comes back in intermittently as 2 to 4 notes to provide an embellishing idea on top of what the right pan guitar is already doing. But we still have the left bass guitar doing that walking idea against it. So there's still this duality, duality. We're going to talk about that in a second. There's still this counterpoint that's going on there, and it comes together real well. I wish that the panning wasn't so harsh, but I also understand, given the time, it came out in the 70s, that this remaster is probably trying to stay true to form, to the original, and this is probably how it was, mixed in the original with these two instruments hard panned. And it's just that my ears are not accustomed to that. I'm used to a more modern production where you do get instrumentation that's pushed out to the sides, but there's not that gap in the middle, right? It's more of a center left, center right, so that you hear them pan left and right, but that they're still filling in the space between the edges and the center. Whereas here, it sounds like somebody's playing, directly to my left, directly to my right, and then 90 degrees centered between them. And there's so much, space between these instruments, right? It feels like there's gaps in the music, so to speak. And that's, like I said, that's just something that deals with the era. This isn't the first band that I've talked about or the first song that I've talked about from the 70s. I think 60s also, we talked about one that was like this. And that's just how it was produced at the time, whereas modern day we've had 50 years of experience producing for stereo equipment, and we have a different, I'm not going to say better, but we have a different view of what should be standard practice for putting instruments in different areas of the sound sphere, and I'm just used to the more modern production. So I'm going to dig into the lyrics here. I think I pretty much got them all, so I don't know if I necessarily need to pull up lyrics, but I'm going to do so just in case I missed any lines, and we'll get into that. Okay, there's a lot more here than I was expecting. Mostly, I guess I picked up on the first verse, which was kind of about, to me, it seemed like like I said, a half machine, half man who people were questioning the humanity of. Has he lost his mind? Can he see? Can he blind? They're kind of enthralled by this marvel. What is this thing? We're asking questions about it. I completely missed the second half of this story, where it mentions he was turned to steel in a great magnetic field when he traveled time for the future of mankind. It seems that he was a time traveler, and when he traveled back in time, possibly to warn them of some future, he said he's traveling for the future of mankind. Um, he gets turned into this half man, half machine in a magnetic field, and um, and then we begin to see the twist of the story here. It says nobody wants him. He stares at the world, so maybe he can't speak. He only has the ability to grimace, to look upon things. He can't deliver this message he wants. So it says he plans his vengeance. And then the second verse comes in and says Iron Man's here to spread fear and vengeance from the grave, kill the people he once saved. So it almost seems like he came back from the future to warn them of a something that's going to happen, and then he ends up becoming resentful to the fact that people don't like him or don't know what to do with him, being that he's this inhuman monster, at least in their eyes. So he becomes the future that he was trying to save them against and brings about this apocalypse. The final verse even says, "With heavy boots of lead, he fills his victims full of dread. Run as fast as they can. Iron Man lives again." It almost makes it sound like a Terminator deal, where this apocalypse, this Iron Man destroying the world, comes about because this person went back in time to warn them about a possible Iron Man who will come ruin the world, which causes him to go back in time to tell everybody about this Iron Man that will destroy the world, which causes him to go back. Like it's a cyclical idea where his actions have led to the cause that would lead to his decision to make these actions. It's a lot deeper than I was expecting, and it completely changes. Well, no, actually, it doesn't, because I mentioned that the ending, the second time that we hear that intro idea, the heartbeat and the machine kind of coming together, I think that works because we see not too long that he's lying on the floor, and people are, asking him, has he lost his mind? What he kind of questioning what he is. So this would be the birth of the Iron Man. And by the end of the song, he's become vengeful and he's enacting all this. And this, I had mentioned that having the drums and the bass there at the end makes it sound like the machine part is taking over. And while I don't think that that is particularly true, we can certainly see the loss of his humanity, which can be seen as another side of the coin to this. He's not giving in to his machine side, but he's losing his human side. It also has this weight to it, this drive, like something is coming, which fits with the idea of heavy boots of lead fill his victims full of dread as they run as fast as they can. Like this giant half machine, half man monster is, heavily marching over the hills to chase these people down to get his revenge. So I think the ending works on both levels, where you can feel the humanity being drained from this person, while simultaneously you also feel the weight of their onslaught, of the death and decay that they bring with them. Very cool. Very interesting track altogether, actually. Um, and now that I know what the song is about, it makes it even. I mean, this we're gonna get off track of the song right now because I think I'm pretty much done with the analysis here. Um, Yeah, I don't think I had anything else about the song to talk about. So just a little bit of fluff, I suppose. It makes it really interesting then, knowing the context of what the song and what it means, um, to hear it in the Iron Man films, where Tony Stark uses it, I think in the second film, to introduce himself. Um, maybe it was the first film. I don't remember. But I never really knew. I don't think Marvel ever utilized it officially as being tied to their Iron Man comic series. Maybe they did, but I don't remember any of that. The first time I remember hearing the connection was in the film when it was used by Tony Stark to introduce him coming into a convention or something. I don't remember. And it's really interesting to know what the song is about. uh, and tie that into Tony Stark's character and how there's really a big mismatch there, and the only thing that lines up is the opening idea of "I am Iron Man" in the beginning. Like that's the only thing that I can see ties them together. It makes it feel very strange to utilize this song in the film because of that. I don't know, I could be reading too far into it, and it's not about the music, so let's carry on to the outro. Those are my thoughts on Iron Man's Black Sabbath. On Black Sabbath's Iron Man. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know about what you thought of this, if there's anything that I didn't touch on that you thought I should have, if there's anything I talked about you'd like to expand upon, and like I said, if you were around this time, especially maybe in your teens or 20s, and you had more of an idea of, the musical landscape at this time. I am very intrigued about how these songs were received at creation, at release, and how they fit against the backdrop of the rest of the music that was being released at the time. I'm always down to hear stories about that. Always. When you're done commenting, you can head up to the description box. In there is a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. It has everything related to the channel in it. You can pick up some merch, support the channel through Patreon, submit a special selection, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord community, check out what I've been listening to, check out what I've been making, all sorts of stuff. Go ahead and click that link and see if there's anything in there that, I don't know, looks interesting to you. Above the description box, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. We have one more video that came out 6 minutes ago. It's our special selection for today. It is by a band called Royal Coda. I don't believe I've heard of them. I don't have anything that I really attribute to that name. So it's going to be interesting diving into that and see what we're going to be checking out today. If you're not interested in that, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC, as usual. We'll be looking at the penultimate hard rock track and our final special selection for the week. Until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.